I'd like to have can I have a motion for approval of the meeting agenda, please? Councilman Anderson, motion to approve it, all right? Second?
Excuse me.
Yes.
I need to ask. When we talked about WCCP, put them on the agenda.
It's on there under the,
who?
it's under the mayor's topics right there, item number 1.
I see proceed of
And family connections.
Family connections.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
it.
WCCP, family.
Yeah, it's covered.
Okay, all right. Now, I've got a motion for approval of the agenda. Do I have a second? Second. Discussion?
Discussion. I also need to go over personnel now, executive session for personnel.
Okay, well, that's on the agenda.
Okay.
All right, okay. All right. All in favor of the agenda, if you got it, we move forward. All in favor, please show your hand, say aye. Aye. All right, the agenda is approved. All right, the first item would be public forum to address the council for signups, although I did not see any signups to address the council. So assuming there are none, we'll move on into the next item, which are the mayor's discussion topics. We've got a vacancy on the URA board, and I have not made a formal nomination yet. I don't mind saying that Craig Jones resigned from the URA board. I intend to nominate Alicia Fennell, Dr. Alicia Fennell, to take his place. Discussed this with members of the URA board, and they've asked that she be appointed to that position. We will approve this next month, but I wanted to let it be known now that I do intend to nominate Alicia for that. On the Family Connections Board, there are 2 openings. I do not have any names in mind as of right now for that. I will entertain if some folks, whether here in the audience or members of the council, if you have some folks in mind that you think would be good additions to the Wilkes County Community Partnership Board, I'll be glad to entertain that.
Let's go back to the URA board.
Okay?
Well, we got to wait till next month. You got Felicia Fennell's name down. Well, we can't make a motion on that today.
Well, it's not on the agenda, that's why. We're going to stick to the agenda. Now, she can certainly meet with them, or they can go ahead and start making their plans, but she will be formally appointed and approved. She's appointed. Well, I'm announcing now that I'm appointed. I'm planning to appoint her. She'll be approved next month. Yes, Larry?
Mr. Mayor, I did send you and the administrator that email that District Council member Cullars and Mahoney and myself recommended that Dr. Fennell be appointed to that board. I sent you that along with the administrator.
And I appreciate that, and I'm going to appoint her.
You did not put it on, I sent it a week or so ago.
I did not put it on the agenda, maybe that's my oversight, but I guess that's your oversight too.
No, I've sent it to you and Jerry.
Did you request that
we made
it be put on the
recommendation. We had to submit recommendation to you.
Well, I understand that, but did you request it to be put on the agenda for
Yes.
approval tonight?
Yes.
Jerry, is that right?
My
I
understanding
remember
is
seeing
you
the
were
email.
receiving nominations.
Right.
District 1, very quick to send theirs through. I don't know how many others you may have received. I hadn't been in on that conversation.
Right.
So I wouldn't know.
So can we amend the agenda to go ahead and add that on to take, to call for the vote in a?
I don't want to get in the habit of amending the agenda. I think we need to stick to an agenda once we make one.
I think that we should never do it, but we have done it in the past. I don't think why it's not an issue to do right now. We want the URA board to be thriving and do their work, and right now they got 2 positions that's open on that board. So I think that, if they're ready to go with it, we should be leading the way and not being the way, and give my blessings with having Dr. Alicia Fennell appointed to that board, and look for great things to come out of the URA board.
First of all, I'm not aware of there being a second opening on that board. There's only one opening that I'm aware of.
Well, you had Craig Jones.
Right.
And then you have another appointment that you appointed to the board, and I told you at the last meeting that there was a violation of the bylaws, but you continue to put them on the board. And so I'm waiting to see if the URA board looks at that appointment in their bylaws to see whether or not that person is served.
We're not gonna vary from the agenda.
Can I just point to add to this discussion? One, that's not on the agenda, the second name. If there is a second vacancy, then that should be researched and addressed.
I'm not aware of a second vacancy.
Okay, well, I don't think that's a relevant issue for this issue.
Right.
Right now, you're talking about what your plan was, and you're considering nominations. That's the way of what I'm hearing. And one of the nominations from Councilman Hill was already submitted, but I thought there were some other nominations you were considering. But I'll say if that's not a controversial nomination and you have decided to do that, I don't see any reason why not to allow that as an amendment in this particular case.
Okay.
Make the motion.
All right, motion's made to allow an amendment to the agenda to vote on the appointment of Alicia Fennell tonight.
Second.
Wait, I believe you made the motion yourself, did you not? Or did Councilman Anderson made the motion?
Second.
Councilman Anderson, you make the motion?
Councilman Anderson, you made the motion, is that correct?
Well, I was supporting what I thought was
Let me just
motion made.
step in there also. Again, I was not aware that I had to submit a note. It was open to recommendations, and I sent it to the proper authorities. I CC'd Councilman Cullars and Councilman Mahoney, and sent it to the administrator and the mayor, recommending that Dr. Fennell be appointed to the URA board. And so it was my understanding now that we move forward. So I don't understand why we're wasting this time on this if you, Councilman Andy and Councilman.
So we have a motion, is it correct from Councilman Hill that we vote tonight on the appointment of the URA board?
Okay.
Motion's made by Councilman Hill, do I have a second?
Second.
Councilman Mahoney, all right,
Question.
go ahead, sir.
Also on WCCP, if I knew you wasn't gonna do it, I would've made action myself to put it on for to appoint 2 people to that board because they meet this month, the 23rd. So the due diligence was you were supposed to, did I not say that, Administrator?
I'm
That we
sorry.
were supposed to appoint someone to the WCCP board and you said you was gonna put it in his hand to take care of it?
And I explained to you, I'm not qualified, I don't make the appointments, that I would put it under the mayor's topics, and he
Well-
wanted it for a discussion item, because he
No,
was
no,
still
no.
receiving nominations.
I specifically told you that I wanted to put
I
it
know
down, but
you
you said you was
specifically
gonna
told
put
me
it
you
on.
wanted
So
to be
I
on
make a
that
motion
board.
that we're amended to appoint 2 people tonight
All right.
from the city council, because that's what we
All
were
right,
discussing.
let's back up. We're voting on the first motion to
Okay.
appoint Dr. Fennell. All in favor of the?
Right, discussion.
All right, all right, let's get our procedure in place here. The first motion is to amend the agenda. It's been seconded. All in favor to amend the agenda? To include the appointment of Dr. Fennell as a motion. All in favor? How many? I'm seeing 2 votes here, 3 votes for. All opposed? 1 opposed. All right, the motion passes. The agenda is modified to include our voting tonight on appointing Dr. Fennell to the URA board. Now, that having been said, can I then have a motion to appoint Dr. Alicia Fennell to the URA board?
So move.
Councilman Cullars,
Second.
second by Councilman Mahoney. Any further discussion?
Discussion.
Please go ahead.
I think there's some misunderstanding out there, because I was advised that you were going to nominate someone else to the board, not Fennell. That was what, in fact, I think you told me that. And so
I
it's
think
kinda
I may
disturbing
have.
that I know somebody's going to be appointed or potentially be appointed and then come here and they'll be raised off. That's
Yep.
not the way we do business, I don't think. We should be doing business.
Well, for clarification, I don't know who the other name was. When Councilman Hill said in the recommendation of appointing Dr. Fennell, if there was another name that was out there, I think at that time, that should have been the time where the name should have been shared. But since nobody chose to respond to it, I know everybody got a copy of it. That's why we're here today. So,
And if I may say, you are correct that we have thrown several different names around, Council Wagner. But at the end of the day, I've appointed Dr. Fennell. It's the mayor's appointment, and it's subject to the approval by the city council, is with our procedure works. But I've chosen to appoint Dr. Fennell to the URA board, and that's been seconded, the motion's been seconded now. I think we're ready to vote on this now. So I'd like to call the vote then to approve the appointment of Dr. Alicia Fennell to the URA board.
So move.
All right, it's moved, it's seconded. All right, all in favor, please show your hand. All right, I'm seeing it's unanimous. All right, Dr. Fennell is appointed to the URA board. All right,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
thank you, Councilman Hill. All right, let's see. I will be looking for appointments to the Family Connections Board. I'm not prepared tonight to make a nomination to that board, to fill those 2 slots. So we'll have to move on, and we'll make that, do that at our next monthly meeting in April.
Discussion.
Go ahead, sir.
To make the nomination, do we have bylaws that we sent into WCCP about selecting either councilman or a citizen to this board, or District 1 or District 2?
Yeah, we've got
Do he have the information?
The mayor?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, next item under the mayor discussion topics is the situation with the ethics complaint. We have an ethics complaint filed against 4 of the council, the 3 District 2 councilmen and the mayor. Our ethics code does not provide for an ethics complaint with 4 defendants in the complaint. It's in the language of the ethics code. It basically just says, refers to the person as the defendant. So we need to discuss tonight how we're going to handle this. My gut reaction is that we should separate them out, but I'd like some discussion from council on this question. I'd like to start over to my right here, Councilman Denard. What is your take on this as to how we should handle these ethics, the ethics complaint, naming 4 simultaneously in the same complaint?
I'd like to ask the lawyer first
All right.
what his opinion is on it.
Mr. Mayor is correct. Section 2-234 sets out the procedures for how the city is to handle ethics violations that are filed. And as the mayor pointed out, there is no provision in there regarding how you handle a collective ethics complaint. When ordinances don't speak to a certain situation or whether it's subject to interpretation, the first body to make a decision on that is this council. And I think from y'all's standpoint, I'm always going to preach consistency. I'm always going to ask that you follow what's the most reasonable way of looking at it. One interpretation of the ordinance would be ethics complaints are handled individually. It's not hard to think of a situation if someone filed an ethics complaint against the entire city council, it could not be heard unless it was handled individually. But that is just one interpretation. And it's not our position to be able to tell you this is what you can or can't do with it. It lies with the board. One point I would make, when you have an ordinance that doesn't speak to how this is handled, you do one of 2 things. Either you amend the ordinance to address these situations, or, and if you're going to go with an interpretation, you do so at a meeting by motion where it can be recorded in the minutes so you know the decision that was made. And if you go back to it in the future, you'll know how you decided. So that's subject to what the council wants to do. I believe that the mayor's hope here is to get a consensus or a discussion based off of what the interpretation should be.
Well, I think that we're going to have to decide tonight how the council will handle this ethics complaint, naming 4 people, in the complaint. But I am on open discussion. Councilman Mahoney, go ahead, sir.
City attorney, in the respect of this conversation that we have right now, in lieu of 3 district, I want to be clear, there's 3 District 2 council members and the mayor just involved in this ethics complaint. Would it be prudent for them to even be having any type of vote on how we choose to go forward with an ethics complaint that's concerning it? I think from the very point this ethics complaint was filed, they should recruit themselves immediately.
I don't know of any legal requirement for them to do that. When it comes to interpretation of ordinances, this is the body that has to.
I want to talk about the ethics complaint that's filed against them. Can they sit on? Can they have voting and consensus on how the ethics complaint filed against them will be handled?
I'm not aware of any legal prohibition. This body is the body that created the ethics ordinance to begin with. It's not a state law. So this council is the one who created the ethics ordinance. It's also this council that can interpret how it's done. Whether it's a good idea, or whether or not it's prudent, I'd leave that to the judgment of the council. But as far as a legal requirement that they not do that, I'm not aware of it.
Well, I'll finish with this one statement. In the past, when ethics complaints have been filed against elected officials that sit around this table, they have had to recluse themselves. So what difference between they recluse themselves when an ethics complaint was filed against them versus now ethics complaint are filed against other council members and they don't have to do it?
I'm always going to preach consistency to my clients, and how local government should.
Whether they break the law or not.
No, you should never break the law. You should be consistent. And that's my point, is that if this body has interpreted these ordinances in a different way in the past, that's going to be of import. But what I want to make clear is that it's created by this body. So they could also change it. And how they take up code of ethics violations and how the procedure exists, it's only here because this is the entity that created it. I'm always going to preach consistency. You have to be responsive to your citizens. You have to be responsive to the folks that have put you here. Now, legally though, I'm not aware of any prohibition on this body making an interpretation of the ordinance.
Question, how many is be on the ethics board? How many? 3 councilmen, you say not?
So under the procedure, when a complaint is received, the mayor shall appoint 3 members of council who, along with the city attorney, shall constitute an investigating committee. That committee, if it so finds that it is warranted, can then send the ethics violation to the entire council. If the mayor is the subject of the ethics violation, then the mayor pro tem appoints that committee.
Correct, but how many, you're not asking my question, how many is on this committee? 3, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Okay then. ABC, 1, 2, 3. Ethics complaint was filed against myself and Mahoney. That's more than 1 councilman, and they took it up. Now, why can't this be filed and an administrator handle it and bring it to the District 1 councilman? Well, all of a sudden now things got to change. Because the governing body says that's who investigated this. So 3 that being appointed, so we got 3 left, so what changes now?
Well, let me.
I'm talking to the attorney, not you.
I'm not sure I understand the question, but I can't speak
Okay,
to
the
what's
question
taking
is,
place.
you got 3 council members that is legally bound to hear this ethics complaint against the 4 of them. What legally that you gonna tell me different that we can't do that?
The question before this board is whether or not a collective complaint is taken up individually or as a group. If it's taken up individually, then the mayor or the mayor pro tem can appoint a person who also is in the collective complaint. So a person who sits on the investigating committee could be a person who is a part of the collective complaint. If the council interprets it in that way. If the council does not interpret it in that way, then the 3 members who are not involved in the action will be the 3 members who are the investigative committee.
Okay, since you said the council interpreted, or we in District 1 interpreted that we'll be the one that's governing over these 4 complaints. So that's where you want to say the council interpreted, and that's where it's going?
The
Because it's
interpretation,
against the 4.
the interpretation of the council is a majority of council. So whatever the majority of council interprets is how this city has to move forward.
So in other words, the complaint against me and Mahoney at the time, it was a wrong complaint. Because you can't file against more than 1 complaint. That's what you're saying, you got to file them separately.
No, sir.
That wasn't separate.
I'm not saying they're filed separately, they're taken up separately, if that's what this body agrees
Once
to.
again, they was taken up together, filed separate, however you want to play it. We both were tried at the same time. Now, what's the difference? If the 4 of those is tried at the same time.
I'm not familiar, but my point is that what you're saying should be
So
argued
you
to.
just stated that you're
I'm
familiar
not,
with what's going on.
I'm not familiar. My point is the argument you're making should be made to your council members.
Okay, gotcha. Well,
We're seeking legal advice, and the other thing I'd like to point out is, if we split up these ethics complaints filed against the 4 of the elected officials, how much is that gonna cost the city financially if we separate these complaints? I'm thinking right now, we're looking at about $1,500, $2,000 just to hear 1 ethics complaint. So we're gonna come back here and take up 4 of them individually. You talk about $6,000-7,000.
Legally, you cannot do all 4 together, because that would mean
What,
the
Dr.
mayor
Maceo?
cannot, the mayor cannot participate, so you, Maceo, would have to be pro temp. That means there would be only 2 other members that have voting rights. That, to me, is not right. You gotta have 3 on the committee. You cannot be on the committee because you are acting as the leader.
Say what?
Yeah. The mayor cannot act as a leader because he's being charged.
I'm not being charged with it, because I ain't violating.
No, you
No.
be the mayor pro tem.
You are the
And he can
mayor
vote.
pro tem.
He can vote too, as mayor pro tem. Once again,
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilman.
I'm sorry, Councilman. To answer the attorney question, the mayor question and so forth, I think we should look at the policy that's already in place. And it's clear that if the complaint is against council member, then that will be a committee. And just in case that it is against the mayor, then the mayor pro tem will take over. I think that we should go by what's already written.
Well, but let me just comment on that. Our code anticipates an individual as a defendant in an ethics complaint. The language is geared towards if a complaint is a violation by a city official, the city official. I'm looking at section 2-234. And then it goes further. The committee shall determine whether the complaint against an elected or appointed official sets forth sufficient facts. The point being that under our code of ordinances, it doesn't anticipate a multiple defendant situation, and particularly here, where it leaves only 3 members of the council who are not named, so and effectively, they would have to be both the investigating committee, and then they'd have to be also the committee that hears the complaint.
I think we've already set a standard 14 months ago when Councilman Cullars and Councilman Mahoney was ethics complaint was filed against them. I was the mayor pro tem, and we heard those 2 cases together. And I don't understand why we're gonna waste time this afternoon trying to separate when we do have a committee, a body that can move forward with these complaints.
What is the body that you're saying can move forward with the complaint?
The complaint, the ethics complaint
Yep.
is against the city council of District 2 and yourself.
Right.
And then the policy is clear. That's when it's against the mayor, then the mayor pro tem move forward.
I understand that, and the
Okay,
mayor
and so
pro
we
tem will
have
appoint the
Councilman
investigating
Cullars,
committee.
you have Councilman Cullars, you have Councilman Mahoney as the mayor pro tem and myself, and we can move forward with these complaints.
Well, again, our code provides that 3 be appointed to the committee. So in other words, the mayor pro tem will have to be appointed
You
himself to
have
be on the
3.
committee.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3.
Well, it's not what our code provides for, that's all I'm saying. Our code provides that it doesn't anticipate this kind of circumstance.
Mr. Mayor, let's not change the policy, and this is the last comment I
I'm
have.
changing the
on
policy,
that.
Councilman Hill. At this exact, I'm going by what our code says.
you're not going by what the code said. The actions for the complaint should have went to the administrator. You should have been, exclude yourself all, period. You shouldn't have nothing to even say, because it's against you. You shouldn't even be talking about it right now, because it's against you and the other 3.
We're not here talking
Okay.
about the merits or lack of merits of the complaint. We're here talking about the procedure we have to follow, given the
Well, you're not
unusual
following
circumstances.
procedures.
There is no procedure in place for this, and we as a council have to decide how to proceed on it. That's the purpose of
You
this
made the
discussion.
procedure against me and Mahoney filing at the same time.
It has
So
nothing to do with this now.
Right. This is the problem. Remember in November.
All right, let's see, I'd like some.
Make a point,
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Getting back to the agenda, just to remind ourselves, this is a discussion topic.
Just
So we're
discussion.
not voting and making a decision at this point in
Right.
time. And I would think, at least from my perspective, the legal advice from our city attorney, which is, and I have great trust and confidence in him and his other members of his firm, to give us a little more clarity of this between now and the time that we do make a decision. All right? Because so many times we get in discussions here and we don't have clarity in all the facts. So I'd say we've had, my perspective, we've had enough discussion at this point in time, realizing that a decision's got to be reached, and hopefully by next city council, we'll have enough legal advice and discussion to make prudent decision by the next city council meeting.
Go ahead, Councilman.
When was this filed? When was this ethics complaint filed?
I have to look, just a moment. February 9th.
February the 9th. And between February the 9th and to this day, nobody consulted the legal folks that we have supposed to be working for us. They have no clue about what's going on and couldn't come up with nothing to tell this body about how we should proceed. So we're gonna have to wait another month.
Let me just speak to that. That is my analysis. I've given you my analysis. We can look further, but as I discussed with Councilman Cullars and Councilman Mahoney previously, your code is silent to it. So the question is, how do you want to interpret it?
Well, we want to interpret it legally, so what is your options? What is your proposal?
My explanation that you take them up individually makes sense because if an ethics complaint was filed against 6 members of this board, you could take no action. If an ethics complaint was filed against 5 members of this board, you could take no action. But that's up to this body to decide if that's reasonable.
Go on there, if complaint taken against 4 members of this board.
It'd be a question for this body to determine whether or not you would take them up individually or not. There is no additional information in your ordinance. Your ordinance does not speak to this. So no matter how much legal research we do, I cannot read into the ordinance a procedure that does not exist.
Okay, question, if we take them up one at a time, okay, who will be the investigating team?
Whoever the mayor appoints
He
for
can't
the
appoint anybody if he's
complaints
part of it.
that are not involved against him, and then whoever the mayor pro tem appoints for the complaints against the mayor.
Oh, no, we ain't doing that. Nah, you slick, but you ain't that slick. Nah.
Well, gentlemen,
And then also, let's talk about how much the burden is gonna be placed on the city as far as how much money it's gonna cost for this law firm to do it. You talk about $6,000-7,000 versus a one-time $1,500 or whatever those fees are.
Councilman Mahoney,
Like,
what is the one-time $1,500 you're talking about?
well, if we keep it the way that it has, and we have all these ethics complaints at the same time, then there's just only one time we have to deal with the hearing, and one time we have to deal with the complaint.
Right.
If we separate it, then now we got 4 separate hearings, we got 4 separate investigations, and I just don't think that the city should be trying to put the citizens on the hook for $8,000 ethics complaint, all because we had 3 council members and the mayor broke the tie, was taking the agenda items off for discussion because of a football game.
There's nothing unethical about that. That's just following procedure, that's all that. It's just, the motion was made, the motion was approved, they were removed. What's unethical about that?
It's
We don't need to talk about the merits tonight.
It's unethical because you said we.
Well, you can't silence
You can't decide anything for
You
me.
can't silence the citizens of a
Correct.
respective district from their elected officials sitting at the table, voicing their issues and their concerns. We have never done that. Listen, we might disagree, but we're not gonna silence District 2 from what they pose with you guys.
You know, Councilman Mahoney, if I might say so, you are a hypocrite.
Oh, wow.
You're at that meeting in January, dressed in red from head to toe, ready to go watch the University of Georgia play for the national championship. And now you're trying to make a big issue about it.
Yeah, but
Have some
But
integrity, sir.
I'm an avid Georgia fan, but the business of the city of Washington was first most important to me.
I agree.
And that's why my agenda items want to stay on the table. But if we really want to watch the game there, all you had to do was say, well, listen, there's a game going on tonight. Councilman Mahoney, can we just table these topics? Well, Councilman Denard, one who made the motion to take the agenda items off, you could have cleared it up as a great leader and said, you know what? we're gonna keep them on, but let's just table to next week. That was never given a choice.
Well, maybe I should have done that, and I acknowledge maybe I should have done that.
I'm not a hypocrite. I love Georgia.
Well, I do too. But I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill here. After all, this is, the allegation of the complaint is a little bit, there's not a whole lot to it. But, you know, in any event, we
My last
need to hear
thought
it.
on this, I want to ask the attorney, are you stating that, I want to make sure I'm clear, are you saying that the mayor pro tem should take up the matters of these 4 charges?
Depending on the interpretation of council. So if you collectively, if you consider them, and the mayor pro tem is included in the allegations, the mayor is included in the allegations, then the mayor pro tem should make the appointment. If you take them up individually, then only those involving the mayor would have an investigative committee established by the mayor pro tem.
So the obvious, Mayor Pro Tem take up
Mayor
this.
pro tem?
Yeah, he's gonna handle it.
And I just want to make sure that the record states, I agree with Councilman Mahoney because the city should not bear this financial burden. And that's what we're doing. We're putting this financial burden on the city where we could limit the amount of money spent. But because we want to make sure that the policy or the code is clear, then we got to separate this, and maybe now, as you say, rather than $1,600, maybe, possibly, now $3,000 or $4,000 that the city gonna have to pay for council.
Money should never be an issue when it comes to judgment. When you take 3 members against 3 other members of the policy, plus the mayor, that, to me, it's ludicrous. It should have been thrown out, it shouldn't even be up here for discussion. You don't know my thoughts. I voted on that night to remove them because those items have been on the agenda over and over and over.
And if you
I was
continue to be
tired
on
of
the
seeing them all.
Over and over. Well,
Yes.
you're just tired of seeing them not.
That's why
let's
not
keep it-
because
let's
of a
keep
ball
it-
game. I wasn't going to no ball game.
All right,
But you didn't respect the council in District 1 that had items. Y'all don't never put anything on the agenda. Why? Because it's 3-3 and the mayor breaks the tie. Why would you put anything on the agenda?
Councilman Cullars, we
It's
don't need to get
I got
that.
the floor right now.
You don't need to be talking, you're just making idle talk now. We don't need to get into that.
You don't describe how I'm talking, describe only how you talk. Because this is why we're here today, because the mayor, when he ran for election, said he was gonna bring this council together. Well, we ain't no closer than I don't know what. So, once again, remember in November,
We will indeed. We will indeed.
I won't be seeing you.
That'd be fine. That'd be fine.
Next, let's get to the other issue.
Well,
I want to address a piece that was put in the paper. Can I address that?
Wait just a moment. We discussed this, we're gonna have to decide what we're gonna vote on, at the next meeting as to whether we're gonna separate these.
Man, you
these
can't,
items
you
out or
can't
not.
decide anything. It's up to the mayor pro tem. The attorney already told you that. You was in this complaint. You can't do nothing.
Councilman Cullars, the city council has to vote as a whole in terms of the procedure, whether to separate them out or not.
You can't do that if you're involved in it.
I do vote on that part.
Oh, you go right ahead then.
The attorney has already said that.
Well, you give you bad advice.
Councilman Cullars, would you please show respect for the rest of the members of the council, please? All right, so we will vote on that in the next month. We've had that discussion now. I think we ought to move on now to the next item on the agenda. And that is council action topics. And Councilman Anderson, you've got a couple of action topics. I think you wanted to discuss the resolution on civility with the Georgia Municipal Association first. Would you like to do it that way?
Yes, I would.
All
I
right,
think
go ahead,
that's
sir.
an appropriate segue. I know we don't have the microphones, but can you hear me in the back? I know it's always been an issue. Can? Okay. Well, those who may not have been here last month, I had a discussion item which was hopefully explained pretty well the Georgia Municipal Association's initiative that they presented to all the cities and municipalities in Georgia, 500 and something of them, of which we are a member, is to initiate a review and an adoption of tenets of civility. And my current motion now has followed on as an action item to follow on from the discussion item last month. So as I put it in the agenda request form, which we're all supposed to abide by for any action item, we explain the item in detail thoroughly so it can be understood by all of the members prior to the city council meeting, and then to articulate in exact verbiage exactly what the motion will be. So for everybody's, I guess, refreshment of the memory, and then for those who haven't heard it before, this is my action item request. As a follow-on to the last month's discussion item about the GMA's recommended civility initiative, I am calling for us as a collective group to endorse the initiative and adopt the resolution as presented in the GMA's sample resolutions, to be signed by the mayor and all councilmen to become an official GMA City of Civility. Now, since last month's council meeting, there are now 33 cities within Georgia that have adopted the resolutions, and they're now shown on the GMA's website as official cities of civility. So, my motion is as follows. Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we as the city of Washington adopt and execute the recommended GMA resolution pledging to practice and promote civility in the city of Washington, and thus meet the requirements for Washington, Georgia to be designated as a GMA City of Civility. End of motion.
Thank you, Councilman Anderson. Do I have a second to this motion? Councilman Denard. All right, discussion. Councilman Hill?
Last week, I was at Athens for GMA for a mock city council meeting to newly elected officials. And Larry Hanson, our executive director for GMA, talked about that civility component. And he also recommended, this is it here, he also recommended that all cities would adopt and work on that and become that civility city. What I've seen here amongst us as city councilmen, we've got to figure out that we agree that we disagree. And there's policies that are simple, and we yet to agree on those pieces. We yet, as a city council, have sat in one room to talk about our issues. And so, Councilman Andy, I agree with you. We need policy and we need this. I'm hoping, as you and Councilman Mahoney talked about 2 months ago, is let's put a document together. Let's come together as council members and talk about what we disagree, instead of airing out our differences here in the front of our citizens. And that's what I think where we are right now. So it talks about coming together as a team, but we have yet to do that. Even with the ethics complaint, we have 2 ethics complaints at this particular time. And I don't even know where the first one are. And now we're talking about the second complaint to separate that to cost more money on the tax, not necessarily the taxpayer, but the citizen, when we can spend less money. So we've got to figure out, before we can get that house together, let's get our house right. But I agree with you, Councilman Andy, on this. We just need to get a document, as you and Councilman Mahoney talked about at our last meeting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, Mayor, Council, we talk about the city of ethics, and we talk about other resolutions that GMA has encouraged all cities to adopt. But when you're adopting these resolutions, and in good faith, you want to try to, do what the ordinance or the resolution outlines and expects out of all of us. But if we're gonna do that, we gotta do it all the time and not pick and choose when we wanna do it. Whether it's favorable, whether it's unfavorable, whether it's against one person or not, we all got a job to do around the state. And, you know, I'm gonna go along with the civil, but I'm also gonna present a resolution from GMA about racial equity. You know, I had an issue with the developer who developing those apartments of it, not because I didn't think he was a great developer, but I wanted to make sure that we preserve racial equity where African Americans and minorities have an opportunity to bid and become contractors. 3 of us wanted to do it, the other 3 didn't want to do it. So, yeah, I think we need to have some skills, but we need to practice it. Not just give lip service to it and just want to hang a document up and say, yeah, I brought this to the council, and then next week you violate it, like you want to violate this ethics complaint. So, yeah, I go along with it.
Further discussion?
I appreciate Councilman Anderson for bringing this up. There's not a better way to show that we're trying to be civil to everybody by starting tonight. So everybody that's preaching civility ought to practice it. And I think it's a good faith and a good sign forward to sign this document and try to live up to it. Thank you.
Councilman Denard, any comments on it? I mean, I'm sorry, you've already.
I've already.
Councilman
I'm
Wagner?
forward, I'm forward with those things, yeah.
So we gotta practice what we preach.
Councilman Cullars?
We don't need any more ordinance or anything, because like I said, we're not preaching the ones that we need to preach, so I'll be voting against it, because number one, when you come to what you need to do, you don't do it, and when you vote with us on anything, you get outcast, and you come back and want to change stuff around, so that doing that is not gonna help you. You got to first love your brothers and sisters around the table, so, now.
All right, any further discussion or comments? All right, can we call the question for a vote?
I made the motion and
Motion is
second.
made, seconded. All right, all in
I second.
favor of this motion that we adopt the resolution pledging to practice and promote civility in the city of Washington per the model from the Georgia Municipal Association. All in favor, please raise your hand. All right, 5 in favor, all opposed? 1 opposed. Motion passes. Thank you, Councilman Anderson. All right, you've got a second item. Go ahead, sir.
And Mr. Mayor, could I just add on that?
Yes.
So it is clear that we are going to start working harder at trying to work together.
Well, let me say
I
this.
want to make sure,
Yeah. Let me say this. I have wanted for this city council to have a workshop to talk out loud these things. Couldn't get everybody on board even to do a workshop to discuss these kinds of things. I say again, we still should have a workshop and spend a half a day talking these things out. And I'm all in favor of doing that, and if there's enough consensus on the council to do it, I think we should. Okay. Thank you, Larry. All right, Councilman Anderson, next item.
All right, and practicing what we preach, hopefully, I will try to explain in a fairly short period of time, but be as succinct as possible. And there again, I will read for everybody's edification the agenda item request form. And this is to address our utility billing process to include the penalties for the late charge. So, in the February council meeting, this is myself here, this meeting and my agenda item. So I say I, it's me. In the February council meeting, I abstained. I'm reading my agenda item.
Well, I hear what you, but my thing is, are you making a motion or you having a discussion?
No, I am reading the intro to the motion. Bear with me, please. This is the agenda item. In February council meeting, I abstained from voting on a motion that was not on our agenda and for which we were not prepared to vote upon. I abstained because I did not have time to fully understand the motion and the probable ramifications. I mistakenly thought that this would essentially table the motion. Consequently, the motion passed, and this council removed the penalties for customers whose water and electric utilities reach cutoff status due to non-payment. And here I would like to say that I'm glad this has come to the forefront because it has certainly put the issue right in front of me, and I've done a lot of research and data collection and gathering over the last 30 days. All right? Now that I've taken the time to better understand the ramifications, it is my recommendation that the original policy must be reinstated. This council adopted an ordinance that requires an action item to be presented in writing at least 2 business days prior to the meeting. Because we did not adhere to that last month, a hasty made decision occurred. We need to correct that ill-advised action, so my motion will be as follows. Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to restore the previously established late charge and the additional deposit after utility non-payment within the established timeframes.
Thank you, sir. Do I
So
have
let's be clear.
let's get a second first.
Well, no, we need to be clear about what we're voting on to get a second.
We're not voting on anything yet. We're getting a second of the motion, then we'll discuss it.
He made a motion.
I read the motion.
I'm talking to the mayor, the chair. He made a motion. We need to be clear on what his motion is going to be.
Well, that's-
He just read it, but I want for clarity. He said restore, so I want to, are we restoring the $55 fees? We restoring the $155 fees? We're not doing one or the other? Which ones are we doing? Because that's not his motion.
That'll be in the discussion about the motion. The motion is made, Councilman has made a motion. Do I have a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Second by Councilman Denard. All right, now discussion. Councilman Mahoney, go ahead.
Question is,
I'll
what?
be glad to answer.
Okay, well,
For further clarity on this, and there we get into the nuances and the clear understanding of our policies for running the city in a very effective and fair financial way, where the city meets all of its financial obligations, but also is as fair and helpful and supportive of our citizens as we can possibly be. And we charge the city administrator and all of our wonderful employees there at City Hall to run this city effectively on a daily and a monthly basis. And to charge him to do that is our responsibility to give him the tools to successfully do that. And I'm convinced that the tools that we had that were approved by this council over a year ago, before I got on here, but I'm saying it's been in there for a while, they approved the $55 late charge and the additional deposit if somebody goes all the way through the process to have their utilities terminated. And it gets into this is where the devil's in the details. We have to understand those processes. And I have great trust and confidence that our city administrator knows this better than anyone, and he understands the ramifications of what this, and I certainly think it was not ill-intentioned, but it was just ill-advised because we didn't understand the full ramifications. And I am convinced that from his analysis of this and everything that I've been able to ascertain, it's not our job as the city council to offer special financial assistance to our citizens that are having financial difficulties. And I've learned a lot. There are many government and private organizations that support and provide financial assistance to low-income households, especially, well, certainly within Washington, to meet, to pay utility payments for energy and water, and one that is certainly, I'm sure most people probably know about it. I certainly learned a lot about it. Just one thing.
You're babbling now.
No, I'm not babbling.
I asked that question.
Let him finish, please. Let him finish.
I will finish.
I gotta wait 10 more minutes?
No.
Yeah, you might. Let him finish.
Let's go into the civility. I'm trying to be civil about this, and I will make my point, but this is a pertinent, relevant point. There's an entity, one of many, called the CSRA Equal Opportunity Authority, that provides funds for LHEAP, it's low income, right? Housing, household energy assistance program that provides it for 13 counties. We're one of them. For an example, last year, 2022, that entity provided over $224,000 to citizens of Washington and Wilkes County, most of that within Washington, for energy assistance. Now, I'm not saying that wipes all the problems out. I'm very attuned and sympathetic to our citizens that have problems meeting their utility bills. But we as the city and the city administrator and our rules shouldn't be in the providing assistance. We should be just in the correct and prudent and wise financial management and fair and equitable to all. That's my point.
Councilman Mahoney, go ahead, sir.
My question was, I still didn't get the answer. We're gonna take the policy back to the original policy, which entangles the $55 fees
Right.
and the $150 for reconnect fees.
Second deposit.
A second deposit. Well, we collected, well, so let me say this. First, I'm gonna clear up a little bit, because I don't think this body brought anything up that wasn't on the agenda or wasn't placed or reached out to the city administrator in a time for it to be on the agenda. That's the first thing. Second of all, before we vote on the last time, having due a timely notice of the issue that was gonna come before this body, the research should have been done then. However, you talked about $55 fees on people who pay their bills, and you got it on the policy as a reconnect fee. That's number one. And we are charging these fees whether or not they're being disconnected or they're not being disconnected. The second thing is, that's where we, since city administrator, because we got one shaking his head over here, so maybe he didn't research that part of it. The $55 fee, when do we impose the $55
When
fee?
they reach cutoff status on the 22nd.
Whether they cut off or not, they're charged $55.
It is a penalty for getting on cutoff day.
Okay,
cutoff status.
okay, so then-
Whether we've gotten to the meter or not, they've gotten to that day.
Right, right, and that's what I just said.
Yes, sir.
Whether or not the power been disconnected or not, we're opposing the $55 fee. Now, the step further is, after they paid their bill late, we charged them 7% or whatever their bill was. Now, if they make it to the cutoff, they're $55 on the bill that attached to their bill. Then there's another $100 if they get cut off, there's another $150 that they're paying to be reconnected.
The 150 is a deposit.
Okay.
That's still the customer's money.
Okay, so but they don't have access to it. We have access to
They
it.
do when they
don't.
close that account. That's their money.
When they close their account,
Yes,
they'll
sir.
get their money back.
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, let's talk, hold on a minute, hold on, I'm going somewhere with this, hold on a minute. So let's talk about cutoff, and how we do the cutoff. When we have cutoff, on the day of cutoff, do we cut everybody off, or do we pick and choose who we cut off? Who said what? Somebody said what? I want to make sure they clear, I want to make sure they understand my question I'm asking. On the day of cutoff, how do we administer the cutoff? Do we cut everybody off, or do we pick and choose who we're gonna cut off?
I would be glad to sit down and go through this in line item.
No,
by line.
this is
For example, let me, I'm
Go
ask you.
ahead, go ahead, I won't cut you off, go
For
ahead.
example, Dollar General. Dollar General gets on cutoff. They've got 4 or 5 different corporate offices that process their bill. We know for a fact that company is always paying their bill. And we have worked through their channels to try to give them time to get their corporate house in order. We're not gonna go up there and cut off Dollar General and cause them to lose $250,000, $500,000 worth of refrigerated goods for which we'd surely be sued. So I use the discretion to try to give them a chance to get their house in order, but they still pay the late fee. They just don't get cut off.
Okay, well, this is what I'm saying. And this is where the problem comes in there. Because, and please don't call businesses' name, because there are black businesses, they get cut off, and they don't get no phone call, and nobody reach out to them and say, hey, we're gonna keep your power on to keep from whatever business that you want to be impacted. My thing is this right here, I don't want nobody at City Hall being judge and jury on who's gonna get cut off. There are 17, 18, 20 businesses on that cutoff list every month, and you don't cut them off. And there are electric customers, just like the residential customers. If you're gonna make the residential customers impose these fees and impose these fines and hold them to doing it, you need to do the business the same way. And don't pick and choose who you wanna cut off on what day you wanna cut them off. If cutoff day is gonna be 22nd, I don't care if they got to work all day, cut everybody off. And don't be picking and choosing. Cause I can look at that list and I can tell who's black on that list that got cut off versus who white on that list that didn't get cut off. You shaking your head, you need to do some research, cause I already looked at it. And that's why I said we should be going to policy. Go back to the basic policy and let them pay their bill. Because you can't tell me we sit at a point now where we don't cut down the extra 2 weeks that they had to pay their bill. So now we want to charge them 7%, which is valid because they paid it late because they did due on the 15th. But charging somebody $55 and we ain't cut them off because they on the cutoff list. And I'm glad you brought up the EOA. The EOA is administering that money because you know why? We got people, both black and white, in the city of Washington that need those resources. But what we want to do, what this motion want to do, impact more fees on them. So no, I'm not going to agree with, I'm not going to agree with imposing fees on citizens and businesses here that trying to make ends meet and trying to make a living here when we got high interest rates. You don't want to do nothing about that. So no, I'm not going to agree with that.
All right, further discussion, please.
Discussion. I'll start with the beginning of this policy. I was the one voting for it to get people that was high on the list, always on the list, to get them in line. So it worked, but as we came back, like I said, I was not in favor of people being on the list that haven't been cut off and charged $55 or paying another $150 was at first. But I sat at this table and tried to discuss with everybody about the situation. Councilman Wagner said if they on the list, they all pay the bill. My question was, we're trying to make a media out of, let's just do the ones that's always impacted to that list. I suggested let's do it that way. Didn't want to do it, so I made the motion. And it was an action item. Documentation better than conversation, so you should pull up my thing on this to talk about and discuss and make a motion on this bill, which was. And for you to sit at this table and don't know what's going on in the city, shame on you, all of you, because you should go to City Hall, see how the working is of this. Every month, I'm gonna pull whoever's on the cutoff list and look at it. I'm gonna pull who they cut off, who they didn't cut off. So, as a council member, you have that right to do and try to help, but I don't want to get involved with it because I'm closely discussing everything with Jerry. And like he said, he wanted to put it back on because he says a help. But as I think about it, I want to do it, but I'm not willing to impact the one that might have got on the first time. Then they said, well, let's give them a free ride, the first one. And I said, well, let's just try to make it to 3 transits, then 3 flags you out. I'll be opposed to keep it on there, but it didn't come to no conclusion with that. But as the mayor stated, we can't keep bringing stuff over and over. We already made the motion to do this. And I think this shouldn't even be brought up because it's already been, should have studied or know what was going on beforehand. You've been on here 2 years, you're supposed to know what's going on with the city of Washington. So I'm not in favor of putting it back in place because of that. And then you said stability, you don't want to work together. Because everything the council District 1 brought up is 3-3 and you break the tie. Remember in November.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, this council seat here is appalled that at this time, and we just prior signed our name to a document that said we're going to try to work together. We have 30 days that the motion had been approved. I don't think that we have enough facts at this particular time to reduce what was done in city council meeting last month. That's point number 1. Point number 2, I've learned of this motion, Councilman Andy, Thursday. And I would have appreciated it more if you had called me and said, Hill, what you think about this? I think that this is something we need to take a look at. Give me your inside out. You agree, disagree? But here we are again, displaying our disagreement in public. And I think that that's sad. I think the citizens of Washington really deserve better than this. And number three, I want to ask the city attorney, what was done last month, what was voted on and passed last month, do any council member on this body have the legal right to come back next month and make a motion to reverse what was done last month, what was passed?
If the question is, can this body change from month to month? My answer is yes. You are establishing the policies of your electric system. The city charter gives the power to the city council to set how you do that. There is no limitation legally on your ability to change, subject to certain rules within the Public Service Commission. Most of that has to do with, there are some regulations you have to follow, but specifically with what's before the body tonight, next month you could put it back off, the next month you could put it back on, the next month you could put it back off.
Thank you very much. I'm ready to vote. I do not agree with this. I think, again, we are pulling 4 and 4 apart. This, you have not had enough time to get the research. I think this is a purposed agenda, and I can't go along with it.
Councilman Anderson, what are the facts underlying this? What's been the experience over the past 30 days in terms of the utility bill payments?
Well, speaking personally, it allowed me time to really do a lot of questioning and researching and truly understanding the nuances of our whole electric policies. I'm not on the electric committee. Councilman Mahoney and Councilman Wagner are on the electric committee. You know, I've been to the MEAG convention and I went to meet the electric cities of Georgia to get familiar with it. And it is a complicated issue. But I tell you, and another point to make, our policies that the city administrator is very comfortable with and certainly supports returning to what was working. It brought us from a deficit to a positive over the last year and a half. They've been very effective, and they have not been onerous and unfair. And then what illuminated even more so to me was the existence of government and private organizations that provide a lot of support and can provide more. One thing also to remember, or to be cognizant of, and Councilman Mahoney made this point several times over the last year, we were the highest utility rate per kilowatt hour in the state of Georgia for almost 2 years. A year ago, we were at about 19 cents a kilowatt, and the average was about 14. I did a lot of research on that. It's on the website. Anybody can go to it. The Public Service Commission of Georgia rates. They do a rate of residential utility survey twice a year. Guess where Washington, Georgia is now? They've had the highest rate for 2 years. Out of 92, we're at like number 35. So that's 56 that are higher than us. The average now is about 15, and we're at 14.3. So these policies that our city administrator and our great employees have been executing, carrying out over the last year and a half, have worked. And one other thing that Councilman Denard certainly brings up a lot of times is Georgia Power, Rail are going up in Washington, Georgia, because of sound financial management has reduced our rate 7%. And what is Georgia Power going up, Matt? I can't remember what it is, but now
They won't announce it until they get ready to announce it.
But anyway, all these other utility companies are going up, we're going down, plus we gave 2 rebates in July and January. It's not a lot of money, but think about this. The economy impacts us all, right? We all know that, and I feel for everybody that has this, we have hard choices to make, but you gotta pay your bills. And we have fair and equitable processes, but we eliminated 2 of them that we shouldn't have last month. And so we need to give that tool back to the toolbox to the person that does this 14, 16 hours a day, to the city administrator to be able to effectively run the city.
Mayor, I got a question.
Go ahead.
The last, city administrator, last 30 days, how many accounts was cut off and not turned back on? People that ran a bill up, didn't pay their bill, chose to leave, well, they left the city or not, they just didn't pay the bill. How many people there, how many, businesses versus residential customers? How many we have last month?
I'm rounding and I'm trying to work back from memory. I think we disconnected in that case something a little over 100. I believe a week later, nearly 30 of those were still disconnected. And of those 30, some were, and it happens when somebody defaults and leaves and they just don't come back. There were a few deaths that someone passed away and there wasn't, say, a family member there to pay that bill. And it continues, reaches cutoff status. And then we end up just having to write off that bad debt.
So we had, so what was that number? You said, it was 100, and you cut 30 people back. How many people?
No, I believe, and again, I'm rounding here and I could be off.
Okay,
but
you're rounding.
I think we cut off something like 102, and I believe 70 something got turned back on. I believe there were about 30 a week after that, when I was talking with Gwen, that had not been reconnected. And again, a number of those would be ones who defaulted on their account and just didn't come back.
Well, let me say this. Jerry does a great job of crunching the numbers. We have an awesome financial team. They do a great job at doing it. I think a lot of the things we're seeing now ain't because of the electric customers here in Washington. It's because of Clean Spark and the amount of power that they use. Well, you can say no. You can say that because, and the reason why I say it because this right here, out of those 30-some people, 60-some people, 30-some people that's cut off, you can't tell me that those 30-some people who have a bill of $200 or $300 gonna bankrupt the city, like Clean Spark, not like wow, was gonna bankrupt for $1 million. So that's why I said these 30 people that haven't paid their bill, they wasn't gonna bankrupt the city. And the reason why we're able to roll back these electric rates is because of the amount of power that we're using from Clean Sparks. Okay, well, you can say that. But my thing is this right here. Now, the people that you just talked about, these 30 people who probably could have paid their bill, you don't tack on $55, you don't tack on $155, and the 7% fees onto them. You just sat here and gave all these lucrative numbers about what EOA do. And EOA ain't all the one to do. First Baptist, they does a lot for the city of Washington. I think they need to be committed for what they do for the citizens here as well. And just and not just to call names out. Those are just the ones off the top of my head that I know of.
I know I signed a lot of the First Baptist checks.
Right, and everybody does a great job, but you got to still
First
remember,
Methodist, Salvation Army.
we have to bring economic development to this city. If you want to get people off the cutoff list, you want to get people able to pay their bills, we're going to have to be strategic on bringing economic development here. That's what's going to have to happen. And I just, I'm never going to, and then another thing, and which I learned last week, our city website. When you go to the city website, that we paid this money to get designed, and you can pay your bills online. When you go over there and pay your bill, it redirects you to the third-party company. Now, if you paid your bill, say if your bill, say on the 22nd, your bill's on the 22nd, what day we cut off on?
22nd.
Cut off on the 22nd. You pay your bill the 21st, 10:30 that night, through the city website. Tomorrow, when those numbers comes in, you're gonna be already charged the late fees, and the late fees is already on the bill.
When we look at the timestamp on that credit card processing, we don't charge them. If they paid it at 10:50 the night before, they don't get charged the cutoff.
But let's agree that, remember, I was up at City Hall last week with a customer that was being charged the late fee when they paid it that night before the bill was due,
That
and they
customer-
still got charged the late
That
fee.
customer did not go to the city's website.
Yes, they did, Jerry.
The,
And I'm telling you, they did. Because I was up there and I paid $1 on their bill just to see it was coming from our city website. So we might need to investigate the city, whoever's doing that processing, because it doesn't say the city of Washington name on it, it has another independent name that's on there. But what my point is I'm making is that this right, if you paid your bill the day of when you're supposed to be paid it, before 12 o'clock, you're assessing those late fees are falling on those accounts.
To your point.
And city employees have told me that we've cut off a lot of people because that was missed, because they thought that they was paying to a third-party company. And unbeknownst to me, I don't know, we talked about electric bills.
Here for our city administrator, please. Did you?
I'm done.
Okay. Let me ask the city administrator, in the last month, when we had done away with those penalty fees, did you see a difference in were there more late payments? Were there more people were going to get into the cutoff list? There were more. Can you tell us numbers?
It was almost triple what we're used to.
30 days?
I'm sorry, what?
In 30 days, you was able to get that information, that data? That was just last month. That's the question. I thought, Mr. Mayor asked, what have you seen in 30 days?
What Colonel right here, he said he seen two.
Just answer this question.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Denard, go ahead.
To several of y'all's point, the numbers have come down on the cutoff list. And I want to remind everybody here, the debt that Washington was in at one time. At one time, Washington's cutoff list exceeded 400 people. Now it's down averaging below 100. So there's really not a question about whether that policy's been effective. It's obviously been effective. To Mr. Cullars' point, it's the frequent flyers that get on this list every time. So if you allow this policy not to be replaced back to the way its original policy, then those numbers are going to increase back quadruple what they are now. So the policy is effective. And in order for the city of Washington to be able to reduce our rates like we have been, it's to do with good management. And just like we are a city and community, and the city of Washington provides lots of community monies, Parks and Recs, Library, Humane Society, Families Connection, it goes on and on. But when it comes to the business side, if we allow the city of Washington to get in the arrears, it's just going to cost the rest of the citizens more money. So it's been a good policy. The numbers don't lie. So I mean, if we reverse that, then you can only imagine, to your point, in 30 days you might not get a good number. But over the course of the next year, how many more people are going to be on the cutoff list when we don't have the money in from the citizens and businesses to pay MEAG?
All right, I'd like to call this to a vote. Do I have a motion can we bring this to a vote?
You already have a motion.
We got a second.
You have
I've got a second? All right,
yes.
all right, all right. All in favor of?
Mr. Mayor, if you could,
Yes.
I wanted to make sure that the manager and myself were making sure that the actual figures were included in the motion. And we put this together with Councilman Anderson.
Oh, no, listen, if anything that's supposed to be considered should have been involved in that.
This isn't considered, this is to make sure the motion is correct. It's just the numbers.
Councilman Anderson, you want to read that motion to the record?
And if it's wrong, make any changes. We want to make sure the record reflects what y'all are doing.
Yeah, make sure it resembles exactly what he said. So folks in November know what he did back then.
Please,
Okay, let me finish reading it.
And while we're looking at that, I've never known the city to have 400 people on the cutoff. I've never seen that. So are we gonna cut everybody off on the same day, city administrator? Or we gonna still pick and choose who to cut off?
Okay. Mr. Mayor, may I have the floor?
Please, go ahead.
I will amend my motion as recommended by the consultation between our city attorney and our city administrator to make it more succinct and specific. I'll be glad to do that. Before I do that, one comment that I think needs to be addressed, and this is certainly in defense of our city administrator, because I heard two unworthy accusations, that one, he was.
Facts.
No, it was an accusation. We can't prove facts based on an accusation.
You had
And
no
he-
data to share with us.
I would like to consider civilly that because an accusation is made doesn't mean it's truthful, or that the individual that is accused is guilty of being unfair and picking and choosing who gets cut off and when. I think that's a very unfair accusation to make against our city
It's very
administrator.
unfair for you to come and make an emotion like this and get your real research.
no.
But I'm telling you that black people are being cut off and this or not. If you would have did your research, you would have found that out. I want to tell you that.
Back to civility, I'd like to
Read it into the record,
finish and go
please.
forward, but I'd like to have it stated that I have full trust and confidence in the integrity and the ability and the execution of fairness by our city administrator, and I think it's unfair to have unfounded accusations put out in a city council meeting.
It's on the cutoff list.
That's my.
It's on the cutoff list.
Let's read this, read the
Now,
motion into
Mr.
the
Mayor,
record, please.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to establish a late charge of $55 for the electric bill accounts who are placed on the cutoff status 22 days following delinquency. And to establish a security deposit in the amount of $150 prior to the reconnection following disconnect. And $250 prior to the reconnection following the second disconnect, and $350 prior to the reconnection following the third disconnect. I assume you put that in there because on all of our utility bills every month, it has there in the chart that explains that. It's been on that same notice has been on every customer's bill, but 2,000 customers, right? It explains that on every bill. It's been on there since October of 2021. So hopefully that's notice to the public. This is just codifying and explaining its specific detail.
Point of order.
What the
Mayor,
motion-
Motion, point of order.
In my defense, because he said I'm making unfounded accusations, you don't have to make accusations when it's facts. When you look at a list, and the list has who got cut off and who didn't get cut off. That's simple.
Councilman
That's not accusation.
If you want to come back later and you want to present for the record.
I will next month. I will.
That'll be fine. We can look at it.
I want to have that same 30 minutes that you don't have to deal with this motion that you don't been trying to babble about.
The motion's made. Do I have a second to the motion, please?
I'll second.
Councilman Denard, all in favor? I'd like to bring this to a vote now. All in favor of the motion to restore the previously late charge per the motion just read to us by Councilman Anderson. All in favor of said motion, this side? Councilman Denard, Councilman Wagner in favor? All right. Gentlemen, this side? Councilman Anderson in favor? All right. Opposed? Councilman Hill opposed? This side, Councilman Cullars, Councilman Denard opposed? I'm sorry, Councilman Mahoney. All right, it's a 3-3 tie. I don't like to break ties, but this is an important resolution, and I'm going to break the tie in favor of the motion. All right, let's move on.
You done broke all the rest of them.
Okay, that's good. All right, next
Order.
item.
Let me clap it out there.
Next item on the agenda would be executive session regarding personnel litigation or real estate matters. So anything else before we go to executive session?
Personnel matter.
Personnel matter and real estate.
All right, can I have a motion to adjourn to executive session?
For personnel and real estate, I'll make that motion.
Okay, made by Councilman Cullars. Do I have a second? Councilman Denard. All right, we will adjourn to executive session. And we thank you, folks. If you want to stay, we'll be a little while in executive session.
You got the second.
All right, let's be clear, to go into executive session, is all in favor of that? All right. Yes, all in favor, unanimous 6, all right, all in favor of that. All right.